Hi everyone, welcome to our inaugural Facebook Live event. It is happening during National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and we here at Webroot always want to make sure our users are staying protected while they're connected to, however many devices we all may be connected to. So my name is Briana Butler. I am an engineering data analyst here at Webroot, and when I'm not here working at Webroot, you can find me on the mountains, snowboarding, and that's just a little about me. I'm here with Dave Dufour.
I'm Dave Dufour, Vice President of Engineering and Cybersecurity here at Webroot, and I like long walks on the beach and reading Nicholas Sparks' books by the fire.
Perfect. So we're here to talk to you about phishing. And just kind of all the things we know about it, but I'll let you kick this off here.
Yeah, so recently we did a study, Webroot, on the psychology of a click, really trying to understand why people are still susceptible to phishing attacks, how it's continuing to be pervasive, that kind of thing. So that's what we're going to talk about today, phishing. Yeah,
and of course, before we go any further, I want to talk to you remind you that this is a live chat. We encourage you to engage, ask questions, anything. And we also have a few questions we received from the community before. We'll be answering those throughout the talk. And of course, there will be prizes. You may win one of these lovely Webroot.
We already gave the car away, so yeah. We have these Yeti mugs that are here.
But if you're like me, you'll love this Yeti. So.
And if you participate, if we get one of your questions, or if you like the video, then you'll be entered in a drawing. We'll draw afterwards, and you'll be notified. Yeah,
and you may win a subscription as well, I believe. So let's get started. So phishing. You mentioned this study we did, and we found that 86% of people believe they can tell the difference between a phishing email and a regular email. Yet 60% of those people actually fall victim to phishing emails. Seems a little off.
It does, but before we go too far, let's talk about what phishing is.
Please.
It's not what Billy and Sandy did when they were 5 years old down at the pond trying to catch a fish out of a lake. Phishing actually is something that's been around a very long time in different forms. I'm an old guy, 1988, I joined the US Air Force. One of the first things they taught us was to protect a computer system, you need to not give out a username and password. And one of the best ways to hack a computer system would be folks trying to socially engineer in the 80s. Yes, I know many of you weren't born then. To socially engineer a username and password out of somebody. So they taught us things like a person calling up like they were tech support, a technician showing up to a desk asking for your username and password. All of these tricks were used a very long time ago. And we've seen that evolve over time in the 90s and 2000s. Yep. And by the way, it comes from like the lure. People put out lures trying to hook you as a fish to get your username and password.
Yeah, and the PH part of that came from that it happened over the phone originally. And I believe that was called phreaking back in the day.
It was called phreaking, yeah, that's exactly right.
We actually had a question from Matthew that was how phishing attempts evolved over time. And you kind of talked about that already, from people calling to try and get information from you to now what we see today, from very effective emails, texts, all sorts of options for people, doing this.
Well, and to be super clear, phishing is a delivery mechanism for a type of scam that's been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years, where someone is basically trying to steal something from you by getting information from you, and using a phone, using an email, using text as that vehicle to get that information. That's really what phishing is, and where we've evolved to.
Right, and that sort of answers this question from Matt, where it's how are phishing emails usually deployed? Can you touch more on that?
Well, yeah. So now it used to be. Not me. If I say me, I don't intend it to be me. I've never done this. But someone would be sitting in their basement, send out an email to as many people as they could, and see if they could get a response back on information, right? But what's evolved is now we're seeing really large organizations, organized crime, actually putting together sophisticated emails with proper English, proper grammar, and they're using psychology to get you to click on these emails.
Sure, and I think that goes back to that stat I talked about earlier with the 86%, who think they can tell the difference, but 60 who still fall for these things. It's that overconfidence where we go back to sort of those original methods where you expect to see something from a Nigerian king asking for money or bad grammar, all these things, but it's really much more advanced today. And so,
very hard to tell today.
Very hard to tell. They're really good, and they're playing on psychology of people and probably our overconfidence in being able to tell if it's a phishing email or not. So yeah, with that, let's go to a question from Carl. Why do you think users are overconfident in their ability to pick out phishing attacks? kind of just talked about that a little bit.
That's right.
But
well, so what's happened? Again, it used to be a ridiculous story, someone asking you they were going to give you money. Now that story has become more sophisticated. Well, first of all, grammar's gotten better. They spell check, they grammar check. But on top of that, the story has shifted, and no longer is it some ridiculous story that you're going to make $1 billion. They're really trying to play on the urgency. They're trying to get you to react to an email. You get an email in from your boss. We were talking about you and I, the email from Aunt Sally that you haven't talked to in 6 months, and you're going to click on that because they're trying to instill a sense of urgency to make you click without pausing and thinking about it. It's
almost sort of, they almost seem a bit innocuous, and you're really comfortable with the message because it is from Aunt Sally or it is from your boss. So
that's exactly right.
Yeah. So, actually, let's ask this next question from Ann. How do phishers get email addresses in the first place?
Ooh. Well,
I'm gonna let you answer that one.
That's pretty easy. So, if you're not auto-generating phishing emails, email addresses, you can easily auto-generate a ton of email addresses based on company name. You get a list of the people that work at that. You figure out, do they use first name dot last name in the company? Do they use first initial last name? That's easy. And if you're thinking about setting up a phishing email scam, don't use that information I just shared. But additionally, you can buy lists off of the dark web. There's a lot of folks out there, as we talked about this being an organized crime thing. There's different groups involved in the entire scheme. Sure. There are people who generate large lists of emails that they put out for sale, that they can buy, that then the phishers will buy those emails, knowing they're valid, and use them in an engine that they can generate very massive amounts of email to try to get hits. So
they have a lot of paths to finding legitimate or generating
That's
emails.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Love to talk a little bit more about with the phishing and why it's sort of, why it's gotten so prevalent today. And there's a great story out there that, in the news about a gentleman in the EU, I believe, or somewhere in Europe, who was actually phishing Google and Facebook employees and stole about over $100 million from employees there, essentially. And he did this by mimicking a company they actually did business with and sending them invoices, things they were used to doing every day was sending money to this company that he was, posing as.
So your point there is, this is a highly technical companies that this person's phishing. So, it's kind of difficult for us regular folks to be able to protect ourselves and to recognize these.
Exactly. And that I think it just, no one should feel bad about it, but, because it can happen to really anybody. Right?
That's exactly right.
So we got a question from Jimmy here. What is it about phishing that makes it so difficult to fully resolve?
So I have strong opinions about this. We talked a little bit about at the beginning how scams like this have happened throughout time. Like this is just phishing, whether it be through text, through a phone, through email, is just another mechanism for initiating that scam. So the reason that it's impossible, really truly impossible to fully resolve is there are humans on the other end of that phishing attack. And no matter what we do, some of them are going to click the link.
Sure, and they get better and better at getting us to click those links.
Correct. Again, by getting that sense of urgency. Hey, your boss, you don't want to let your boss down, except if you're Briana. I'm her boss. Not really. Well, I am, but anyway, but she doesn't really care what I tell her to do. But like the urgency from the boss or from your family member or something like that.
Authority figures, and they've, like you mentioned that word social engineering, which if you're not familiar with, they found maybe something out about you. So they know, maybe they know who to act as they send this email or to, act or be.
Right.
But all right. So another question from Chris. What phrase or phrases seem to be the most successful for phishing emails? So I would say it's not necessarily one phrase they may use, but it's what you mentioned before. It's that urgent message, that familiarity, that really is what's, going to be successful or, create a successful phishing campaign.
It's that psychology.
Exactly.
And they're trying to get you, they're triggering a reaction rather than you pausing and actually responding.
Right. And that's really on us as users to now know that this is happening, and it can look very, benign, I guess, and to pause and be like, why is Aunt Sally emailing me? Maybe I should call her.
But you haven't talked to her in 6 months. It's going to be a 4-hour conversation when you call her.
So they just got really good. All right, so another question from Matt. What are the best ways to layer protections against phishing attempts? Oh, I think there are a lot of ways to do this. Excuse me. Well, I think say you've clicked something and it is actually trying to download some malicious content or something onto your device. So having antivirus protection that's one layer that's going to protect you.
Yep.
Just being knowledgeable as well. Can you talk
well,
more
yeah,
about
and
layers?
there's things out there as well in software that can identify a phishing site.
Right.
So maybe if you click that link, you have the proper software installed, it can flag you and say, hey, be careful. This could be a phishing site. Be aware of what you're doing here. Don't potentially click through it.
Yeah, no, I think those are two things you can layer on to help with that. So actually, to kind of help to add into this from Darlene, if a person does click on a phishing scam and error, what is the first thing they should do after the oops?
Well, let's talk about that, Briana. So we started the whole conversation with the fact that we had done the psychology of a click. We'd done some surveys to understand why people are clicking and things like that. And we had a magic number of people who had been phished. 35% of those, this is people who have been phished. This is like they clicked on a link, they entered their credentials. 35% of people did not do what, Briana?
They did not change their password.
They did not change their password. After they entered their username and password in a phishing site, they did not change it. The good news is everyone has unique passwords for every single account they have, right? Every single person out there does that, so they're probably okay.
Yes, totally. I would argue that a little bit and maybe say less of us have unique passwords.
That's probably true.
So imagine the majority of folks out there do not have a unique password and you don't change it. They now have probably username credentials for a multitude of your logins. So
exactly right.
Change your password immediately. It's so easy. And beyond that, you've clicked it and you've logged in. Maybe you just clicked it. Stop at that point, because now you're on a page where it wants you, it's going to try and get something from you. So that's maybe where you can now pause.
Well, and it can do things like track the email that where if you've clicked it, it can track it. Hey, someone's going to respond to this email, so we want to make sure we keep sending to that.
Right.
And so one thing I do that I like to share with folks is if I have an email that I think's phishing, I actually send it to Briana and I say, hey, Briana, click this for me. I don't know if it's bad or not, and I don't want to get in trouble.
I'll share my email later so you can unknown.
Exactly. Find a Briana. That's the #1 way to keep yourself from getting in trouble.
Right. No, please don't do that. Although it's great. I have my own family who now sometimes reaches out and asks if this is phishing email, and I'm like, don't send that to me. It probably is. So, all right, we have another question from Nathan. Any good resources to teach end users to always hover to check the actual sender's email? Good resources to teach. I mean,
well, Nathan, you're a good resource because that's a great comment. So, Briana, enlighten us on this.
This is just being knowledgeable to actually do that. That's kind of when we talked about those pausing moments. You're like, I didn't expect an email from whomever, the bank, your institution, social media, whatever it is. And so stop. It takes 2 seconds to hover over and see. Now, when you're hovering, you're going to want to look for, say it's from us, Webroot.com. Maybe Webroot spelled with 2 zeros. That should, be a trigger that maybe this isn't actually from us.
If it's from my bank, will they send from Gmail?
No, most likely not.
Most banks aren't going to send from a Gmail account.
So you could call your bank. You're like, that's weird. They've said something's happened on your account. Call them.
So that's back to the point. When you receive something you're suspicious of, don't react to it.
Yes.
Respond by calling the financial institution if it's a financial institution. Maybe if it's Aunt Sally, you haven't talked to her in 6 months, it's going to be a 4-hour call. Call her. Find out if she sent the email. Try to get around clicking through that email if you find it suspect.
Yeah, and that really goes back to just not engaging and just kind of doing what you can outside of engaging with that piece, that phishing attempt.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. All right, so another question from Julian here. Whilst I can hover the cursor over a hyperlink received by email when using a desktop computer or laptop, what can I do to check suspicious hyperlinks on mobile devices without accidentally clicking?
Well, my first response to this question is you could proactively intentionally click on it rather than accidentally click on it.
Right.
I'm kidding, of course. Do not click on it.
Click with intent.
Right, exactly. No, do not do that. No. Honestly, this is a great question that I don't have an answer for because I don't know how you do that on a mobile device.
Right, I actually don't. I'm not sure you would be able to hover in the same sense as you would on your laptop or your desktop, but you could at least, I believe, you could check the sender. So maybe you can look for clues there. And then I would probably do that same attempt where you go outside your email or text and plug it into the browser.
That's a great point, and maybe copy it. And then, Julian, honestly, I'm going to look this up because I don't know. That's a great question.
Yep, definitely. From John, I think we may as well jump to the next question here. What do you both think about phishing through new avenues, such as smart speakers? Oh, that's a great question, actually.
That's a good idea, John. Let's talk later.
Yeah.
No, it's a great. The interesting thing is, are you being proactive? Because if my smart speaker started talking to me, I'd probably unplug it. But
without prompting.
But actually, if you could write software that lives on smart speakers, and it wouldn't be too complicated. I'm not trying to put anybody under the bus here or anything, but you could, this is actually an interesting idea that's listening to conversations that then is capturing information and then sending it off.
Yeah.
So one, buy reputable smart speakers from companies that you trust.
And take security into,
consideration
account when they're, creating these devices.
Man, that's scary, John. Thanks for terrifying us.
Yeah, great. Nice job. And from Adrian, in the next 12 months, are we going to see any change in the tactics of cyber criminals? Can you see anything new appearing on the horizon we need to start to be aware of? I mean, I don't believe there's anything brand new, at least in the realm of phishing, that at least comes to my mind. But they're going to continue to get better in their tactics.
So I'll agree with that. It's the radar detector thing here in the States, where every time we make something that provides an added layer of protection, the cyber criminals get much better at circumventing that. So what we want to do, really, it boils down to, and that's really, I see that continuing. Like we've seen every year, we think phishing, maybe it's on the decline, it just keeps going up and up and up. So I really think it's about being vigilant, being aware, and it's on you to not react to an email. You need to pause. Yeah,
this is for consumers to continue to educate themselves, to educate their family members, whoever they can, that this is happening, and I'd argue it's not going away. So we need to be better as users, truthfully. So, we have another one from, forgive my pronunciation, Admon. Do all phishing scams involve email? That's a great question, and no. It would be the simple answer. Phishing can happen in many different forms. We kind of talked about it earlier, but via SMS, via text.
John's going to be making some via smart speakers here very soon.
Smart speaker, apparently. Let's see, phone, back in the day. I mean, and it's, let me see, what am I missing? I'm definitely missing something.
No, but the point there is, it's a delivery mechanism. The technology you have now is a delivery mechanism. Email is the most prevalent. So if you watch your emails, but we see a ton of texts, see a ton of social media. So just be aware. I mean,
I think we've all seen those, especially with text and even phone calls that we're getting that just seem really out of place. And, what is this? And that should always just raise a flag nowadays as we get those. Let's see. From Naeem, does Webroot have a training program to teach companies how to detect those scams? We do, in fact.
We do. That sounds like a loaded question there. Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. It is Webroot Secure Anywhere training, and it is something that is going to educate you on the ways people, send phishing attacks and how to detect them. Really.
And we can auto-generate like phishing attacks inside an organization to actually see how people respond to that.
Yeah, you can, maybe you can also practice with your friends, sending out don't do that. So you can get their email. I'm kidding, probably don't do that.
Fun for a Saturday night. This is what Briana does at the bars.
Exactly. Don't sit near me. So another question from Kat. Is there a way to protect yourself against a phishing scam that uses your name to target others? So I'm trying to interpret that question. Is it they're using your?
It's like they got my name and email and they spoofed my email and sent it to you and said David, and it looks like my email.
Yep.
That's
that goes back to like the social engineering. Then.
Correct.
So they found out I'm your friend.
Well, I don't really have any friends.
I may slightly kind of. But no, they can definitely do that. And I think that's actually probably one of the more sophisticated methods to find out that information. Find a friend, imitate them, and you're more likely to click, right? If you think it's from, your, we use her a lot, but Aunt Sally.
Right, Aunt Sally, exactly, because you don't want to call her.
Exactly. I think one of our last questions here from Edwin. Phishing is getting so good. Should we just give up on email?
Yes, we should.
I mean, I guess yes could be a simple answer, but we're not going to, right? We've been mailing, communicating in all methodologies across history, and today it's email.
Well, and our marketing folks were telling us a kind of an anecdote how every year they go to some big conference and they say email's dead, and then the next year they go back and they say email's back.
Yeah.
So no, it's not going anywhere.
Not going anywhere. I think you'd have a hard time giving it up.
That's right.
Just being better about it. All right, guys, this has been so much fun.
Yes.
This has been awesome. Having great questions.
Hopefully it's been informative.
Yeah.
Hopefully, if it's not been informative, you've enjoyed it, like watching a train wreck.
Yeah, exactly. And we hope to see you next time. Yeah, thanks so much.